Let's get started. We all harbor so much fear and anxiety about failures because our society teaches us that failure is a bad thing and that winning and succeeding is everything. But I would like to propose to you that failing is just as important as winning or succeeding. As a child, we fear people will laugh at us or reject us when we fail. As we get older or as an adult, we not only fear that people will laugh or reject us, but we fear that they will lose respect for us. But failure is just an event in your life. And as such, you should not allow it to determine how you view yourselves, nor allow it to control your responses to it. Because failing does not make you a failure, since it happens to everyone. In truth, because we're all human, we're all guaranteed to fail many times in our life. You may have failed a course or two or an exam or two in school. You may have had a failed marriage or failed relationships. You may have failed to do your job or to get a job or a promotion or career that you wanted. You may have failed to keep your word or your promises that you've made to other people and even to yourself. How many New Year's resolutions are broken every year? You may have had a failed business, failed at parenting, failed to handle your finances properly, and the list goes on and on. But these are all just events in our lives. I submit to you that there's power and purposes involved in all failures, but only if we learn to embrace the process and the journey associated with them. You see, failures take us on a journey, and failure is not the end of the story, it's the beginning of a new one, if we allow it to be so. We're all wired to fail. It's part of the design necessary for our self-development, for accomplishing our goals, and for reaching our destiny in life. Let's take a look at a quote by a man named John Maxwell. John Maxwell is a leadership guru who has written over 100 books on leadership, self-development, businesses, and the like. John says, "Your attitude towards failure determines your altitude after the failure," meaning how you think about failures, how you internalize them, will determine how far you're going to go in life. We cannot stay stuck in failures and think that we are going to move forward in our lives. We can take it two different ways. We can either push past it or we can let it hold us back. The power and purposes of failure are many. The power is that it redirects us and should cause us to make some sort of change in our life. It teaches us, sometimes in a benign or pleasant way, and sometimes in a very painful way. However, it teaches us. It teaches others around us as well as ourselves. We may not realize it, but we affect the lives of so many people in our daily walk of life, even by the way that we handle our failures. And they force us to look at other options, sometimes whether we want to or not. And failures strip us of unhealthy pride and shows us truth. Truth about our circumstances, truth about other people, and even truth about ourselves. They also act like an alarm that shake us up and wake us up, sometimes showing us hidden dangers or things we need to know before going any further. They also make us wiser through lessons learned, but only if we retain those lessons. And I would like to interject here the difference between knowledge versus wisdom, because I stated that failures can make us wiser through lessons learned. But there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is information. Wisdom is the proper or right use of information. You could have all the knowledge in the world at your fingertips, and we do through books and the internet, etc. But if we don't use that information properly, it will not make us wise. So, yes, failures can make us wiser through lessons learned if we retain those lessons, but also if we use the information it has given us wisely. Failures also give us new perspectives. We see things we may never have seen had it not been for the failure. And it's a motivator that pushes us out of our comfort zones and into our future. And it's an asset because we do obtain a wealth of knowledge to draw from when needed, and we can share those with others. And they're indicators of who we are. I said earlier that failures do not determine who we are, but they can reveal who we are inside, our character. Therefore, failure is part of the development process necessary for shaping our character. And finally, it's a test we must pass if we are to move forward in our lives. Failures are signposts pointing the way to success and working to give us the resolve to get there. I have a quote by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is the author of the Chronicles of Narnia series. And Lewis says that repeated failures, are finger posts on the road to achievement. One fails forward towards success. So failure is not meant to hold us back. It's just meant to be like a stepping stone. So that is my short list on the powers that failures impart to us. If anyone has any other power points that people think they can add to this list in one word or one sentence, could they please add that to the chat so we can be all enriched by it? While you're doing that, I'm going to move on to some of the purposes of why we need to go through failures. Why is it necessary for us to go through failures? Failures help us to find new direction and new meaning to our lives by giving us those fresh perspectives that I talked about. And failures give us feedback. For example, what might have caused the failure, or was a contributing factor to it? Did pride have anything to do with the failure? Because that is a character trait that we can change. And what were your responses to the failure? Better yet, what should have been your response to the failure? It's important to analyze these things for future reference. And failures teach us what we can't do or what we shouldn't do, but they can also teach us what we can do because they stretch us to discover more of our God-given talents, abilities, skills, and potential that we may not have even known we had until we were tested by the failure. Failures also help us to discover different ways of doing things and other options we didn't know existed before. And they allow us the opportunity to reinvent ourselves, to change. I have noticed in my life that when people go through a failure, even a catastrophic failure, that if they change for the better because of the failure, and it's a consistent change, people will respect that. Of course, you're going to get some people who will never forgive and forget the failure. And you have to look past those people, or you have to give them time to catch up and get over the failure, especially as they see your behavior change. So this is something I have noticed in my life, and I wanted to interject that there. And I have a quote here by Henry Ford. Henry Ford, of course, is the inventor of the Model T automobile, and he also developed the assembly line mode of production that we use still today in manufacturing. And he says that failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. Failures help us to discover things about ourselves, both good and bad, and other people as well. And they teach us that we need to find resolve inside of ourselves to push past the failures in a positive way so we don't become paralyzed by the experience or give up too soon. And I have two quotes by Thomas Edison. One I have on the slide, and the other ones I have a little story that I am going to tell you about. But Thomas Edison was a very prolific inventor. He had 1,000 patents to his name, and he is credited with perfecting the incandescent light bulb. And this is what Thomas says about failures. He said that many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Failures are trying to push us forward. It's trying to show us, yes, don't go this way, don't go that way, go in a different direction, or do something different, or stop doing what you're doing. But it is not meant to hold us back. The other quote that I have by Thomas was an interesting one, and it's a true story. When he became successful at creating the incandescent light bulb, it took him 10,000 trials or experiments to perfect the light bulb. When he became successful, a reporter came to him and asked him this question. He said, "How do you feel about failing 9,000 times before getting this right?" And Thomas Edison turned to him and said, "I didn't fail 9,000 times. I just found 9,000 ways that didn't work." I take you back to the quote by John Maxwell, because this is a wonderful example of that quote in action. It said that our attitude towards failure would determine our altitude after the failure. So this is a perfect example. I don't believe that Thomas Edison knew the word quit. I believe that he just continued on, just knowing that there had to be an answer to whatever he was seeking. And I don't think he sat there and just worked on the light bulb if he had 1,000 patents to his name. I think he just went to other things while he was working on the light bulb, and he just kept his mind busy, and maybe he learned things from those other things that he invented that helped him with the light bulb. But this is how you have to visualize and perceive failures. It's not something meant to hold you back. Failures are meant to develop your strength of character because they teach you perseverance, that stick-to-itiveness that you need to get past the failures. And finally, they're to give us hope and build up our confidence when we finally do succeed. For then you can become the teacher, the mentor, the expert on the subject, or someone that people turn to for advice. And again, that is my short list of the purposes of failure. And if anyone has any other purpose points that they can add to the